You know, this month of May, we're closing out the month of May, and we started out the conversation with this idea of grace. My personal definition of grace is love in action. So we talked about gracing. And then the following Sunday, we talked about nurturing and really what that is. And then, of course, last week, Shelley talked about peacing. All about peace. And she shared that true and lasting peace begins, of course, with us. It begins with us. And she shared something called systems holism. Systems holism, which at its core simply means that we live in a world of nested systems. For example, Shelley shared, in the body temple, there's a cell that's in an organ, that's in a system, that's in your body. That's a nested system. And it goes from a smaller system to a larger system. So in this example, this holistic theory essentially says that this system starts with yourself, and then the greater organism is your family or friends that are family, your community, your nation, your species, the planet, the cosmos of the divine. This is the nested system that we all belong to and are engaged in. Now, if we track this, the whole shebang really starts with us, right? As does everything. It starts with a single cell. And where is that single cell, you ask? In our bodies, in our being. And what is holding the nesting system within us? Our bodies, our body temple. We have explored all, gracing and nurturing and peacing, and today, in this beautiful month of May, I am inviting us into the conversation around embodying our bodies that contain the nesting system within us. To embody means to integrate, but we here in the West, in so many ways, we are taught the opposite of embodying our bodies. Anyone? Yeah. So many of us were taught to treat our bodies as often somehow separate from ourselves. There's this disconnection that can come around the idea of our bodies, and in particular, the idea of loving our bodies exactly as they are. My talk today is called Your Body is Holy. Yes, that is what I said. Your body is holy. I can feel in the room this when I say that. And I understand it, because there's this, especially if you grew up in a certain, with a certain background, maybe a Christian background or home, where in some Christian traditions, the body is seen as something to conquer. It is something seen as sinful or just downright bad. And if that wasn't your experience, every one of us here, all of us have been bombarded with marketing messages that we somehow need to fix or improve our bodies from the time we can remember. I remembered Teen Beat, from the time we were young, we were getting these messages. Now, there are some exceptions to this. There was a lovely gal that I love so very much, who is a former girlfriend of one of my younger brothers, maybe 15 years ago or so. And we all loved her very, very much. She was just such a delight. She was so refreshing because she would, in the most loving way, and I'm talking with ease, in the most loving, easy way, in normalized way, she would refer to herself and her body as beautiful, wonderful, and fabulous. And she really meant it. And it was not arrogant. It was just her truth. And it wasn't boastful. Doesn't that sound boastful? And isn't that odd that that sounds boastful? It wasn't at all. It was astonishingly refreshing and empowering. I remember actually my sister at the time, one of my sisters at the time, turned to me and she said, "This is wonderful and quite shocking." Because it was. And she was a teacher for all of us in that moment. You know, I feel as though we all have this opportunity to lean into that energy because my brother's former girlfriend knew that her body was holy because she revered it. Think for a moment, you know, when you speak to a baby or a young child, think of how precious and loving and careful you treat them. Think about the tone of your voice when you speak to them, how kind you are to them. We naturally soften when we speak to little ones. Now I want you to think in this moment how you speak to yourself. I want you to think in this moment, perhaps, what your inner child may be longing for from you around ideas about your body. Either silently or out loud, if you refer to your body temple as beautiful, wonderful, and fabulous all the time, oh my gosh, I heartily congratulate you. You are a rare bird. And you have much to teach all of us. But if you don't, I invite you to lean into what I'm going to share with you today. The 13th century mystic, Meister Eckhart, 13th century, wrote, "Someday you will hear all things applaud your wonder. Life claps in all of the divine's performance. When your veil is removed, you, dear, you, everyone will see that your being is holy." When your veil is removed, you, dear, you, everyone will see that your being is holy. We so often separate our bodies, our physical bodies, from our being. And in doing this, we miss so many opportunities for peace within ourselves. When we create duality, when we create a separateness. Last week, Shelley so beautifully said, radical self-acceptance is the pathway to peace. Radical self-acceptance is the pathway to peace. I think so many of us accept many things about ourselves, but I'm not sure how many of us fully, completely, and totally and deeply accept and revere our bodies as the body temples that they are. As I was thinking about this idea, it came to me, you know, those of us who grew up in a Judeo-Christian background were told that we were made in the image and likeness of God. Yes? We were told that we were made in the image and likeness of God. Well, I remember being a very young girl and hearing this and thinking to myself, I don't look anything like an old man with a long beard up in the sky sitting on a cloud. Where am I in this image of God? It's funny, but there was no place for me. I was excluded from the image of God in my childhood. And all of this was internal. I didn't have words for it, but there was a separation there. I know for many of us, the concept is confusing. So I want to be really clear. In our metaphysical New Thought teaching, our image of God is not an anthropomorphized one, is not a man in the sky. In our tradition, our idea of God or the divine or spirit is love, not the kind of love you find in a Valentine's card. Rather, the kind of love I am talking about that is the synonym for God or spirit, is the all-encompassing, eternally magnificent, the ultimate reality of life, that what we call God by so many names ultimately is that magnitude of love that you feel when you look out into an ocean or into the eyes of a young one or your beloved. And so if we reframe this idea that we are all made in the image and likeness of God, then really what it is, and what I'm going to invite you into, is that we are all made in the image and likeness of love, of the magnitude of love with a capital L. And so it follows then that our physical bodies, our body temples, are love. The theologian and writer Barbara Brown Taylor, who writes about this, she wrote, "I think it's important to pray naked in front of a full-length mirror sometimes. Especially," she writes, "when you are full of loathing for your body. Maybe you think you are too heavy. Maybe you have never liked the way your hip bones stick out. Do your breasts sag? Are you too hairy? It is always something. Then again, maybe you've been sick or come through some surgery that has changed the way you look." She goes on, "There comes a time when it is vitally important for your spiritual health to drop your clothes, look in the mirror and say, 'Here I am. This is the body like no other that my life has shaped. I live here. This is my soul's address.'" Your body is your soul's address. Jesus of Nazareth said, "Make your home in me as I make mine in you." Make your home in me as I make mine in you. So the spiritual principle, the universal spiritual principle that I am talking about today, is our oneness with the divine, our oneness with God, our embodiment of the love that we are, our soul's address. Ernest Holmes said, "We are God's stuff." He was including our physical bodies in that, not just our thoughts, not like our mind is somehow separate from the skin we wear. We are God stuff. And the more that we can embrace and embody this love that we are all made from, my friends, we find deep sanctuary within ourselves. And in this deep sanctuary within ourselves on a cellular level, we find and experience greater peace. There is a woman named Anne Fullerton who tells the story of her 93-year-old father, Norman. Norman lived on a little island where he spent most of his life, and the ferry from the mainland is basically the essential lifeline for everything and everyone on this island. And Norman is a favorite on this island. He's always friendly and respectful. He takes time to talk with everyone. Everyone knows him. He has very limited eyesight now, and his lack of hearing has caused him to have to modify his interactions. So instead of his hearty, "Glad to see you," he often will ask, "Tell me who you are," so that he knows who he is speaking to. And on this one particular day, Anne was waiting for her father to get off the ferry, back home, and she noticed that he was making his way through the crowd very uncharacteristically for him. He was trying to actually avoid contact with people. He was clearly searching for Anne, for his daughter. And when she caught up with him, he shared with her that he had taken the ferry to town earlier that day because he was having trouble with his dentures. And the dentist had to keep his dentures in order to repair them. And so he sent Norman back home without his dentures. So besides being legally blind and deaf, today, Norman had no teeth. And in this condition, dear Norman had already spent the entire day in town navigating, traffic and wrestling with public transportation and having to navigate a large grocery store and hailing a cab and forced to interact with many people. This was a man who, as a lawyer for an international airline, negotiated with Russians, arranged contracts with the Chinese, and established agreements with African nations. Today, at 93, he is an elderly man who couldn't see that day, couldn't hear, and had no teeth. He was very ready to go home. And before Anne could figure out how in the world she could possibly console her father, who she loved so much, he turned and looked directly at her, and he said, "You know, I am learning to love what is. I am learning to love what is." His 93-year-old body. I think we can all of us, whatever age you may be, especially if you're 93, I think we can all learn a lot from Norman. We all have an opportunity to love what is, to love the physical body, our soul's address, as it is right now. And this, my friends, is a revolutionary act. This, my friends, is a holy act. There is something called body positivity. I know some of you are very familiar with this, but if you are not, body positivity is a social movement focused on the acceptance of all bodies. And this radical step towards peace within our nested system as diverse human beings living together on this planet is glorious and important. In her book, The Body is Not an Apology, Sonia Renee Taylor writes, "Making peace with your body is your mighty act of revolution. It is your contribution to a changed planet where we might all live unapologetically in the bodies we have. Where we might all live unapologetically in the bodies we have." Notice, Ms. Taylor writes, "Making peace with your body is your mighty act of revolution." Making peace with your body. And for some of you, that may look like treating your bodies with the greatest care and love, being mindful about moving your body, feeding it well, slowing down your nervous system by meditating. Or for some of you, it may look like seeking support from a therapist or a practitioner to unpack and learn how to unlearn all of the messages and lean into and embody and learn how to treat your body temple with reverence and love. Wherever you are on this spectrum, I invite you into it gently. These are all ways of embodying your holy body. And here in this nesting system, here is where it gets very interesting for me personally. Honoring the body, honoring your body, is not just an individual thing. It starts there, yes, but ideally this is a collective practice. The body of love that we are, the body of love that we are collectively requires that we work towards protecting the bodies of others. It requires that we protect the bodies of the unhoused, feeding those in need, protecting the most vulnerable among us. The body of love that we are calls all of us forth to join together to protect trans bodies, differently abled bodies, women's bodies, Black, brown, and indigenous bodies, to care for the bodies of our neighbors, our sisters, our brothers, and our siblings. Because, my friends, together, collectively, we are the hands and the feet of love in this world. Every great spiritual teacher has taught this for millennia. We are the hands and the feet of love in this world. There is a wonderful artist. He is now, I think, 27 years old. His name is Devin Rodriguez. And he lives in New York City. And he wanted to provide acts of kindness. And he's an artist, an incredible sketch artist. And so he started sketching people, drawing people when he was on the subway. And he would choose people who looked like they may be having a challenging day or maybe, otherwise would have been overlooked. He chose people who may have had, lots of piercing and tattoos or looked like hardworking people, who looked like they were having a bad day or who looked lonely. And then Devin would hand his sketches to the people. Here's a few. Look at that. On the subway, he just drew that. And then he would hand people these sketches. Isn't that incredible? And they would be stunned. Some of them would be so surprised they would cry right on the spot. Why? Why would they cry? Because they felt seen as they were. Exactly as they were. They felt seen. This became a video sensation on TikTok and on Instagram. He really is a good artist. And while, of course, this was an act of kindness on his part, what is amazing here is that his drawings, he would draw all these different bodies. And in the videos, you would see in real time, I invite you, Devin Rodriguez, I invite you to Google him and watch these videos. It's stunning when someone is fully accepted. Fully accepted. The reason this went viral, it's no surprise. It's because he was teaching us what worthiness looks like. He was reminding us in those sketches and in those videos that we are all worthy. That we are all worthy of being seen for exactly as we are. Barbara Brown Taylor wrote, "One of the truer things about bodies is that it is just about impossible to increase the reverence I show mine without also increasing the reverence I show yours." Think about that nesting idea. As we begin to lean into the spiritual practice of having reverence for our bodies, loving our bodies, we are then able to look up and have reverence and love for all the different bodies, the bodies that make up this magnificent tapestry of humanity in all of our glory. So this week, I invite you into the spiritual practice of daily affirming that your body is holy. Stand in front of a mirror naked if you must. This body is holy. My body is holy. I invite you to do that every day this week. Are you willing? Just try it. Just try it. Just try it. Just try it. Your body is holy. It is perfect. It is sacred because it is made in the image and likeness of love itself. Of love itself. How many times have you heard me say that you are spirit in shoes? Not spirit in theory or spirit in mind, spirit in shoes. And then I invite you to, like Devin Rodriguez, see that same spirit in all the people you encounter this week. You can silently say to yourself while passing them, on the street or in the grocery store, I see your divine perfection. I see your divine perfection, Pat. I see your divine perfection, Deb. I see your divine perfection, Pam. I see your divine perfection, beloveds online. I see your divine perfection, Mom. I see your divine perfection can be a silent mantra that you then carry out into the world, understanding this is a revolutionary act of peace building. This is participating in the activity of peace building. Because we are all connected on the seen and unseen sides of life. We understand that this universe is an energetic universe. If you silently affirm that for someone, it is felt on some level. How can it not be? How can it not be? I see your divine perfection. Your body is holy, just as it is. Lean into that spiritual understanding and spiritual principle this week.